My name's Jim Taylor and I'm your host on Current Talks, brought to you by Dale Power Solutions. Current Talks is your go-to video podcast for the latest insights and expert opinions in the critical power industry. Join us as we learn about the experiences of leading industry professionals and the innovative products and services they manage. We'll be taking a look at industry trends and technological advancements, and all the while keeping an eye on that journey to net zero. If you're passionate about or work in the power industry, you won't want to miss this. So I'm here today with Hannah, the lead engineer for energy storage and renewables. Hannah, welcome to Current Talks.
Thank you.
So you've been with Dale Power for a while now. Could you give us an overview of how you started and where you are?
Yeah, so it's actually been 10 years this year. So I started as an apprentice at 16, straight out of school. Had absolutely no idea at school what I wanted to do. I don't think most 16-year-olds have any idea of what they want to do. And it all sort of just fell into place. So I was always really good at my maths, my sciences, computer science, but equally quite practical and creative. Like I loved my textiles. And I couldn't find the right sixth form for me. I couldn't find the right subjects at sixth form that I wanted to do. And just by chance, I met somebody from an apprentice training provider, and they were chatting to me and they were like, hang on a minute, why don't you just start work and come and do an apprenticeship? And then it was through them that I met Dale Power Solutions. So when I started, Dale Power Solutions were like the leaders in apprenticeships. Like they were well known for it. They'd won loads of awards. I was told if you get into Dale, you've done good. So I started at Dale's, and then the first few years was kind of like rotational apprenticeship. So worked in many different departments, sort of did a bit of wiring on the shop floor. I worked in design, I worked in tests. I did a little bit in electronics and software development, and that's where I actually settled. So I ended up as a development engineer for probably like 5 or something years. So that was mainly like electronics development and software development. And then from there, I did that for many years, really loved it, but then sort of got an itch to be a little bit more like forward facing, more customer interaction, because the electronic side of the business is very, very behind the scenes. So then I moved into new product development. So I was in charge of sort of introducing products into the company across all areas of the business. So industrial UPS, commercial UPS generators, and the energy storage.
So you're designing these at this point?
So not designing, but looking for the correct like partners for supply. Some of them are designed by us, and some of them it's like finding the right products, partnerships, doing all of sort of like the development testing, documentation, manuals, data sheets, all of that sort of stuff, working with marketing teams as far as releasing the products and promoting them. So I kind of got involved in all of that. But the biggest product that we introduced in that period was energy storage. And so a lot of my time went on to that because that was a huge release for us. And then it got to the point of handing that over, and I just kind of didn't want to hand it over. So stayed on as lead engineer for energy storage and renewables.
It must be really nice to work for a company that allows you to remain with a passion project.
Oh, massively. Yeah, like they've supported me through everything that I wanted to do career change wise. Like it says a lot when you've been with the same company for 10 years, but you've not been in the same role. Like you've had those opportunities and progression and stuff like that. So
how has what was it about the battery energy storage solution that particularly drew you to it? Is it the environmental aspect, or are there any through threads that you kind of like can identify from your own career so far?
Yeah, so for me, I'm part of a generation that's sort of like grown up with knowing about climate change, and it's really exciting to be part of the solution. So although it's like a very small like drop in the ocean of what the solution is, especially to becoming net zero, you feel like you're helping businesses find solutions. Whether that's with reducing CO2 emissions, reducing their energy bills, or overcoming the fact that they do want to reduce CO2, that involves upping their electrical consumption. And how do they actually get over the fact that their grid connection isn't capable of it? And designing those solutions and stuff to help them move forward. So
I think for a lot of people doing the recycling, they feel like they're doing their little bit. I think you're doing quite a little bit more than most of us. So obviously the battery energy storage solution is where you found your home for now. And, working along with that, have there been any other highlights or particular, way markers along your journey?
Ooh, I'd say a lot of the recent ones are energy storage related. So introducing the products. I also installed the first one that we did. So I project managed that installation, and that was our system that we've got at the office, at our Scarborough office. And so I project managed that. And then earlier career-wise, I got involved in the electronics design and software development for the main like control and monitoring and alarms equipment within the industrial UPS. So that industrial UPS is then like rolled out in many different utilities companies and stuff like that. And that's like the main control system of it. So I've done all the electronics design and software development for that one as well, which is pretty cool.
That's really cool. That's really cool. And also no pressure about being able to supply energy to your head office.
I know.
Everybody knows whose fault it is if the light goes off. That sounds absolutely fantastic. How do Dale's battery storage systems stand out?
So I'd say we've got a really good range of products.
Yeah.
So we've got anything from sort of like smaller systems. When I'm talking smaller systems, we're talking from like 100 kilowatt hours up. So essentially, if you imagine like an individual cabinet, that would be the size of a 100 kilowatt hour system. And then we can go all the way up to like multi-megawatt hour systems.
And your 100 kilowatt hour system, what typical customer would that be?
So that would be for like smaller sort of like commercial industrial businesses, maybe like offices and stuff. But that's completely scalable. So you can have multiple of these systems stacked together depending on the size of the business or the consumption that they require. So we design everything. We'll look at a business's half-hourly data, and that gives us a really good idea of what they've consumed over the last year. And then that's what we'll go off to then work out exactly which products they want and size them accordingly.
What's your role within that process?
So I'll sort of get involved from the initial like conversations with customer. If a customer comes to us and says, look, we're interested, but we don't know anything about it, what can you do for us? I'll get involved from that stage, find out about what issues that they're facing. Because different customers will have different priorities. For some, it's the sustainability aspect. They need to reduce their CO2 emissions. And that's like a really big driver at the moment. So we can come at it from that angle. For some, it's the energy bills, because energy bills are just going up and up and up and up. And they're going to continue to do so. So energy storage can be used to have a massive impact on bringing that back down again. And then for some, it's grid constraints. So everybody's got a grid connection. To decarbonise, they're encouraged to basically become more electric. So by removing their gas, putting in heat pumps, putting in EV chargers, and most businesses' grid connections won't cope with that expansion. And essentially, when these businesses are going back to the grid, they're going to talk to the DNO, so district network operator, and they're saying, look, we need a bigger grid connection. The grid always have to say, yes, you can have it, but what they can do is put a massive lead time on it and charge them a lot of money. So they're saying, yeah, you can have it, but only in 10 years' time. And it's like the business is like, no, we need to do it now. So then that's like another way that energy storage comes in, is just adding that additional capacity to make sure that they can keep growing as a business, they can move forward, they can hit these sustainability targets, which otherwise would be a massive roadblock and they wouldn't be able to hit.
So I'm imagining there are going to be benefits to these systems as you've just said about the grid connection thing, but for the high energy users and for people for whom like the power cannot go off.
Yeah.
And so how do your systems and you and your team, how do you fix that problem?
Yeah. So one of the misconceptions I'd say about energy storage is using it in a backup situation. So energy storage is used for day-to-day usage. So what we'd do is we'd size it so that you're shifting your energy normally from like daytime usage to nighttime. So you're charging your battery overnight, and then you can use that to discharge during the day. Energy storage can work when it's off-grid. So if the power cuts off, you've got a battery capacity, you can use it then. But because of how you're sizing it, you've never got that sort of reliance that there is definitely going to be capacity in that backup storage. So you wouldn't use it as like a critical backup power unit because you wouldn't know how much charge you've got in there.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense.
But what we do,
so that's a separate system.
Yeah.
The UPS is different. an uninterrupted power supply is different from a battery energy storage solution.
So battery energy storage doesn't remove the need for UPS and generators. But what we do, because we understand all of them, is where a company's got generators and UPS, we'll integrate the full system. So we'll make sure that that energy storage works with the generators, with the UPS, but when the power cuts off, we know exactly what's going to kick in first, when it's going to kick in, where the power's coming from, and we can manage that.
So that's going back to all the modelling you guys have done, and understanding that bespoke customer's need.
A big part of that is the control systems.
Okay.
So we can put in an energy management system that will control like all of these systems on site. So it's all controlled in one place, and we'll integrate that for a customer, which if they were getting different pieces of equipment from different suppliers, that would be the main challenge to actually get that all working together and integrated.
So are there still customers using code that you wrote when you were back in the...
Yeah.
That must be really satisfying.
Yeah,
good. So with the battery energy storage solutions, you covered a little bit about how that can affect the financial implications for a business. I know in some of the other discussions I've had, the numbers just climb and climb and climb and climb and climb. Can we dig in a little bit as to how do you know that you are going to save these people money?
Yeah. So what we use is most sort of commercial businesses will have two tariffs. So they'll have a daytime tariff and a nighttime tariff. And so the first way that we use energy storage to save money is by charging the battery storage overnight on the nighttime tariff, which is much, much cheaper than the daytime tariff. And it does depend on energy provider to how much differential there is. Sometimes it can be 5-7 pence. Sometimes it can be up to 15-20 pence. So that completely depends on the energy provider. But if you've got that system in place, you're then looking for the biggest differential and the cheapest nighttime tariff. So that's the first aspect. The second is you'd usually pair energy storage where possible with solar generation. Okay. So the benefit of doing that is you can put as much solar generation as you can on your building. So when businesses install solar but they don't have a battery, they're limited to what they can install without having to export a load of excess. And generally, if you export the excess, you get hardly any money back for it. And yet you'll be buying electricity back at a much higher price when you need it later on during the day.
Oh, okay.
But what you can do when you use battery storage is you can put a lot more solar generation. You can store that excess in the battery, and that will contribute when there's less sunshine, so you're not generating as much, and to your nighttime consumption as well. So that will then be used, and you're just in general buying a lot less electricity.
And that obviously
massively saves you money because you're not paying for any of that generation.
What role do Dale's Power Solutions systems have in enhancing grid connections and enabling microgrids?
Yeah, so there's two sort of ways that they can do this. So first of all, when you've got solar paired with a battery, or just the battery on its own, to be fair, normally you'd have higher consumption during the daytime. So when, say, you've got a factory, you're working from 9 till 5, your higher consumption is going to be during that period. So if that's where you're close to meeting your limits, what you can do with just a battery to start with is charge that overnight when you're consuming much, much less and you've got that space on your grid connection. And then that can be used to basically trickle in through the day and add an extra bit of capacity on top of what your grid connection can provide. So that's basics with a battery. When you're adding solar into the mix, you're obviously generating as well. So you've got an extra sort of band from the generation. You've got an additional band from your battery, whether that's from generation that's been captured earlier during the day, or whether that's from charging overnight, discharging during the day. So that can help. Where the grid connections are really insufficient for what the factory requires, you'd look at putting in a microgrid. And when we talk about microgrids, we're kind of thinking or talking about energy storage, solar, and a generator. And because carbon's such a key topic, when we're talking generators, we generally talk about using them on HVO, which is hydro-treated vegetable oil, which has just got carbon benefits. It's a carbon neutral fuel. It's got less emissions. So that's sort of the solution that we propose. And that can either be used to move them completely off grid, or it can be used sort of with the grid feeding in, but the energy management system will manage whether the energy is coming from the grid, the solar, the generator, and we'll be able to set that up accordingly to work for the business.
So for a business that is using a large amount of electricity, the point is that the grid connection can only supply so much.
Yeah.
And so if you're, often getting up to, I don't know what the numbers would be, but above 80 or 90% of your grid connection, you want to make sure you've still got some extra headroom to be able to continue if there's a spike or something.
It's really key when people are talking about installing EV chargers and installing heat pumps as well, which are the two main things that we're seeing like as a trend in the industry. That's what people are looking to install, and that's where the issues are arising.
So is a heat pump, is that a constant load on the system, or does that have spikes as well?
It's fairly constant. It completely depends on how they're running it.
Because I can imagine the EV charging points are only going to be needed when the EV are there. So that's going to be provided.
Yeah, we actually size, because when these systems are being put in, when we're doing our initial modelling and calculation, we'll add these on top. And for EV charging points, it's quite interesting because you don't do it on the number of charging points, you do it on the number of cars.
Okay.
So you base it on the number of cars, the hours used to charge, say, a car, and that's how you do your additional consumption and size it, rather than saying, oh, we're putting 8 charging points in. So if they're all running all the time, it will be this much. You go, oh, actually, we've got a fleet of 8 cars, so this is then how much it's going to be.
So how do you and Dale Power Solutions contribute to the global net zero goal?
Okay, so by installing, when we're talking behind the meter, we're talking about systems going in for a specific business's consumption. So in the behind the meter sort of sector, you can reduce people's scope 2 CO2 emissions by 2 ways. So the first thing is by installing renewable generation. So you're putting your solar in. And as I say, you can put in more solar, you can capture that excess in the battery, you can become a lot less reliant on the grid network, and a lot more self-consumed sort of thing. The second way is by shifting your energy usage to nighttime. Also reduces your CO2 emissions. So the grid at nighttime is much less carbon intense, and that's coming from the wind generation, because your demand's much, much lower, and the wind generation is still producing a lot. So the grid in general is much, much lower on its carbon intensity overnight. So if you're charging your battery overnight and you're using more electricity on a nighttime, that then means that you're also reducing your CO2 emissions.
Would you say that energy independence is something that SMEs are moving towards?
I'd say so, because to reach the government targets of being net zero by 2050, I think they have to be, because as I explained, the national grids, it's had very, very little investment into the infrastructure since about the 70s. So it is a massive roadblock otherwise to people actually reducing their CO2 emissions. You can reduce it so much by putting in more efficient lighting and stuff, but that's only so much that you can do. And then at that point they're like, oh, well, we need to get to net zero in line with government initiatives. How do we do it? And I think the solution at the moment is very much to move off grid, to be generating your own energy. And not only is it helping you reach those goals, but it's actually reducing your energy bills significantly as well, and offering a really good payback. So it's the obvious way for people to do it at the moment.
So for those companies for whom the energy bill is a significant part of their, P&L, the idea of being self-contained, generating your own stuff, understanding, working with partners like yourselves in order to make sure that they can continue to deliver everything they need to, regardless of what government does.
Yeah.
I can see that being incredibly attractive.
And it's such a key thing, especially in industry at the moment. Everybody's asking, before they're working with you on supplier vendor assessment forms, that sort of thing, it's all about ESG. It's what are you doing on the ESG side? What are your targets? What are you aiming towards? What have you done? And it's such an important topic at the moment that businesses are putting a lot of importance on that.
And you can see that CapEx spend moving forward over the next 10, 20 years and basically people becoming self-sustained.
Yeah. Well, generally, like if you're installing solar and energy storage, you're looking at a return on investment anywhere between 5 and 10 years, but normally towards the 6-7 year payback. So it's kind of a no-brainer. Not only are you removing your like CO2 emissions and reducing that massively, but equally you've got a really good return on investment and you're getting that benefit moving forwards. And when we model the return on investment as well, we don't count for inflation, and we know that inflation just keeps going up and up and up. So actually you're getting a better return on investment than what we model. We just model the worst case.
I bet you are the Chief Financial Officer's favourite partners across multiple sectors. And are you seeing an impact across the worldwide sustainability effort, between you and your partners? Do you see this happening across the world?
I'd say it's the industry's changed a lot. I'd say we've looked at doing energy storage in the past and it's just not been there. The last probably 4 or 5 years, it's massively picked up in the UK, and across the rest of the world, it's been like taken on a lot sooner. But the UK has been quite like slow to this. But the last 4 or 5 years has been a massive switch in people's priorities and looking at solutions like this.
And has the UK now caught up? Where are we in the market?
I'd say we're getting there on like your big grid scale projects. I think the UK market's actually quite big in Europe compared to the rest of Europe. We've got quite a lot of like grid scale energy storage systems going in. And yeah, as I say, businesses are all starting to think about it, put a lot more importance against it.
And you see Dale Power Solutions still remaining to be a market leader and involved in this?
I think so. I think we're quite uniquely positioned in the fact that, one, we've got a heck of a lot of experience. Like, we've been going for 90 years. We've got a lot of experience in like doing the design, installation, like the full EPC, engineering, procurement, construction, like wrap around products, especially in the power industry. So we've got that. We've already got all the connections within industry. We're very, very well known within the utility sector, etc. And we can offer that support from day one. So it's not like we're just selling a product to a customer that they don't know about. It's like the support from day one of like, what do you need? What are your challenges? This is how we'll design it. And sort of like holding their hand for each step, and then doing all like the maintenance and support after that as well. I think it's a full turnkey package that puts us in a really unique place in this market to be the leaders.
Hannah, it's been really great talking to you today, to hear all about the inspiring journey that you've had from a 16-year-old apprentice through to design and product management, and now where you are leading the industry, I guess, in battery energy storage solutions. So I'd just like to say thank you for coming and talking to us today, and I look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
That's it from Current Talks. We'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for tuning in today. If you found our discussions interesting and want to learn more about what we do, visit our website at dalepowersolutions.com. Or if you prefer a chat, call 0330 999 3000. We're always here to help and answer any questions regarding your power needs.